Hello, this is Tasha Achilleos. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
They all say, who is Doctor Who? Where is he from? What does he do? They wonder who is Doctor Who? So I ask you, who's Doctor Who?
Welcome back to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, the podcast that explores the colorful world of Doctor Who collecting, those who collect, and all kinds of Doctor Who merchandise. And sometimes we just talk about Doctor Who. Great place to do that. Brought to you in part by Forbidden Planet and Bags Unlimited Incorporated. I am Larry Van Mersbergen, your host and producer, and I've been a Doctor Who collector now for 42 years. So since 1981, I've been doing this. Welcome to our 64th episode, celebrating 60 years of Doctor Who, and we're excited for this year. I opened up one of the first Doctor Who stores in Chicago back in 1984 that actually exclusively served Doctor Who fans. In other words, we didn't have a brick and mortar place. We took our stuff from fan club to fan club, and eventually that turned into fruit, and we called the store Bundles from Britain, which I made up when I was 15 years old after I had a pretty sizable inventory of Doctor Who items that I was fine with my collection. I had lots of stuff that I could sell. So it was really quite a lucrative thing. Of course, fast forward a few years, after lots of success, had a partner, sold my half of the business to my partner. And that was back in 1989. Of course, we fast forward a long time, and I find a book called Red, White, and Who, The History of Doctor Who in America, and found my little company on page 384. So that really blew my mind. You can find a link to buy this book now. It's out of print, I believe, but you can get copies from Amazon.com. You might pay a little bit more for it these days, but everyone should have a copy of this book. You can go to DoctorWhoCollectors.com, and there's a link there to Amazon. We are part of the Direction Point Doctor Who Podcast Network. What an exciting thing to be part of a network that actually helps Doctor Who podcasters, as opposed to a network that does nothing for Doctor Who podcasters. So I'm still scratching my head why this network isn't twice the size. But hey, it will be. So directionpoint.org is the website. And if you are a Doctor Who podcaster, jump on board because there's no cost or obligation. And that's something people don't believe, but that's true. There is no cost. There is no obligation. We have, of course, in our network, great podcasts such as Time Streams, Police Box in a Junkyard, the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, Doctor Who Literature, Traveling the Vortex, and many, many more. And speaking of links, I always give these links out in every episode because you don't have to start at the beginning. If you want to go back to episode 1 and listen to my talk through on the Dalek book, it's a great listen, but it's before we got our format. I was just starting out. It's a great episode though, but you can start at any point, find the topics you're interested in, find the guests you want to listen to, and there you go. So we thank you for listening. Two great links. First of all, if you want to keep track of your media items of Doctor Who for free, or create a want list, or look for links to buy, go to timelash.com and select TARDIS Library, and you can keep track of your books, vinyl, CDs, Betamaxes, whatever you got for free there. That's a special thanks to Mr. Dan O'Malley, who keeps that site up and running. If you want to find out what is available out there in Doctor Who in a vast database of Doctor Who collectibles that is absolutely free to access, you need to get to Howe's Transcendental Toy Box, and that's at drwhotoybox.co.uk. And of course, by Howe, we mean David J. Howe, a wonderful guy, a great friend, and one of the best resources for collectors, has one of the largest Doctor Who collections in the world. If you're looking, of course, for great Doctor Who items at great prices, look no further than DoctorWhoStore.com, not a sponsor of this podcast. That is owned by Alien Entertainment. And the reason why we talk about DoctorWhoStore.com is, you remember earlier when I mentioned I sold Bundles from Britain to my partner. Well, my partner was Gene Smith, and Gene Smith is the CEO of Alien Entertainment. So obviously things went very well after that fact. So anyway, lots of sales running, lots of Target books, some hardcovers, lots of figurines. If you live in the Chicago area or western suburbs, you can select free pickup from the Lombard location. And of course, they've got 2 locations now, one in Lombard and one in Logan Square. So visit alienentertainment.com for locations and store hours. You can also get some good items at Forbidden Planet, one of our sponsors. We are currently rehabbing our website. We had some trouble with some of the embed codes that they sent us from Forbidden Planet, but we're getting those fixed and you can continue to shop. We've had quite a number of people who shopped at Forbidden Planet through us, so we thank you for that, and we'll get that open as soon as possible. Of course, our eBay store is open, and we've got some hardcover books, we've got some Target books, we've got some other miscellaneous items, and of course, all the proceeds benefit the podcast. So on our website at DoctorWhoCollectors.com, in addition to all the podcasts, we also have the complete guide to classic Doctor Who hardcover books. These are the books published from 1974 to 1988 that were published in hardback, some with dust jackets, some with printed laminate boards, and they all, not every story made it to that level. But these are some of the most sought-after books in the Doctor Who collecting world. And we list some reprints that some collectors didn't even know existed, and we provide proof of life for a lot of those different things. Chicago TARDIS 2023, set for November Thanksgiving weekend. That's the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday after Thanksgiving. Join us for the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who with this convention here in the Midwest. That's where I hang out, so you can come and say hello to me. For more information, of course, go to chicagotardis.com. And so far, we've got some guest announcements. Officially on the guest list here, we've got Jason Haig-Ellery. He's the CEO of Big Finish, a wonderful guy. And of course, with your convention ticket, every convention ticket comes with Fraser Hines, who will be there. And of course, we're going to have the son of Patrick Troughton, Michael Troughton. He was scheduled last year, but had to cancel, but he's back on the list for this year. Also, don't forget, hotel reservations sell out quickly, so get that if you're coming in from out of town. You don't want to miss this year's convention. So what else is going on with me? Well, in very short time from the time this podcast airs, on April 22nd, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. at the Dirks Hall at the Milwaukee School of Engineering University, I am a guest at Consinity 2023, the Gathering of the Geeks. Visit my table. I will have plenty of Doctor Who Target books, hardcover books, and some records and some other things. I have some goodies for sale. I'm also presenting, hopefully, tentatively presenting my Doctor Who Collector Showcase. I haven't really finalized that yet, but hopefully I will soon. And I noticed that my name was missing from the guest list on the last social media post. I'm sure that was an oversight, and we will get that corrected. I did present a wonderful virtual session on Doctor Who games for Oricon 23. That video will be available on our Patreon site very soon at the $10 level. So you can just visit us at our Patreon site, and at the early level, the lower level, you can see that video. I am very much confirmed to be a guest at Doctoberfest 2023. That's in Indianapolis, Indiana. And that's, I believe, October 21st. And I will have the Doctor Who Collector Showcase and Traveling Museum in a dedicated room. But I'm also extremely excited to announce that joining me on the guest list is none other than Sophie Aldred, who played Ace in the classic series and in Power of the Doctor. I contacted Miss Sophie on Facebook recently, and she responded back. She's excited to be there as well, and looking forward to hanging out with her. So that will be fun. So don't miss this festival. Details on tickets will be coming very soon, so I will have that information here also on my website at DoctorWhoCollectors.com. And don't forget to like their Facebook page. That's Doctoberfest 2023. I will, of course, be back at Chicago TARDIS in November. I am also confirmed to be a guest at the Twin Cities Console Room in 2024 and doing the Doctor Who Collector Showcase. And I am still tentative for Gallifrey 1 in 2024. So watch this space for that. New to the collection. So this was a nice find. I found a copy of The Wheel in Space in hardcover, new condition. Not a library book, never been read. The binding is tight. It's a very nice edition. And I was able to secure a copy of the very first Radio Times cover from 1964 featuring the Dalek invasion of Earth. I will have this on display, of course, at Consinity and Oktoberfest. So very nice to have that cover along with the Tomb of the Cybermen cover that I recently got. So that's about it for that. Speaking of hardcover books, as I did before, rumors abound, of course, on books getting a second or third printing by people that said, yeah, maybe I think I had one of those, but I sold it. But we have no proof of some of these books existing. So I'm always on the lookout for concrete proof of existence of second print, third printing, even fourth printing. I don't think any fourth printings happened for the hardcovers. But I only have one hardcover book with proof that it had a third printing, and that's Doctor Who and the Loch Ness Monster, and I have it in my collection. So it is very, very much a real book. The first and second editions of Loch Ness Monster, very hard to find. So anyway, if you have a book that, for instance, Brain of Morbius, second printing, or Pyramids of Mars, second printing, I think I have that one maybe, but if you have a book that is a second printing for a hardcover, it says second impression, take some photos. Take a photo of the cover, the spine, so we can see what the imprint is, and the title page, and that'll help us out in getting complete information for the collectors. And we're more than happy to include your name and hopefully get your permission to use them. Anyway, you can contact me for details at drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com. Also, we love talking to collectors. Let's talk about your collection. And I don't mean in a bad way. Let's hear what's going on with you and how you're doing things. Do you keep your books in publication order or story order? Do you keep them in number order? I'm not sure why. How do you have your figurines set up? Do you have a Dalek in your room? Let's check this out. Give us an email and let's get you on the show. On today's show, I am extremely excited about today's show because today I talk with Tasha Achilleos. She is the widow of the great Chris Achilleos, who did most of the artwork for the early Target books and the illustrations. Of course, many, many pieces of art over the years. And sadly, we lost Chris 2 years ago. And so I'm talking with her. We've got some very important questions that are going to be answered here on this podcast. I have the exclusive interview lined up. She is a wonderful lady, and you're going to love this talk. And so you don't want to miss this conversation. So don't stop listening now. Keep us tuned in. And speaking, of course, if you're not familiar with FeedSpot is a place where podcasts live. Doctor Who podcasts live there as well, and they do a ranking every year of the top 90 Doctor Who podcasts. And as of last year, we were ranked number 33 of the top 90 of Doctor Who podcasts. Thank you so much. We're glad to make the list. I want to thank all our patrons out there. If you would like to see exclusive material, including the video interview with Tasha Achilleos, and I'll explain this too. We had Zoom technical difficulties for over an hour, and I bless her heart. She kept going. She kept trying. We finally got it, and we finally had our conversation. Some guests would have given up at that point, and we wouldn't have had it, but we did figure out the problem, and we got it going. So that's a $15 or level above, and you can find it at patreon.com/Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. If you'd like to support us anywhere else, you've got a couple of options here. We are a Podbean podcast at drwhocollectors.podbean.com. Click the Become a Patron button and support us at any level, or you can go to our website at drwhocollectors.com, click the Donate button, and submit a dollar amount of your choosing. We also accept Doctor Who items as donations. These are not tax deductible. But if you want to get rid of your Target books, if you want to get rid of your stuff and you don't want to go through the hassle of selling it, support the podcast, because what we do is we sell the items and we take the money and we use it to pay our bills. Keep the microphones working, keep the website up and running, keep our podcast hosting bills paid. That's about it. We are a nonprofit podcast. We rely completely on donations and subscriptions. Thank you so much. Our theme song is Who's Doctor Who, composed by Barry Mason and Les Reed, performed by Fraser Hines. If you want to talk about this podcast with anybody, and we expect you to, of course, we are everywhere, pretty much. We're on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Podbean. I think the only place you will not find us is Spotify. And of course, we're a Direction Point Network podcast. You can find us at directionpoint.org.
We are going on a journey, a very long journey, through the world of the Target novelizations in publication order. Every week, we are looking at a new book, talking about Terrence Dicks, Malcolm Hulke, and all our Doctor Who novelization friends. Whatever you do, keep turning the pages. This is Jason Miller of the Doctor Who Literature Podcast, a member of the Direction Point Podcast Network, and you are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Hi, I'm Juliet.
And I'm Nathan.
Experience Doctor Who from the very beginning through a classic fan's eyes.
And through the eyes of a new Who fan.
Reminisce and relive those classic moments with Nathan as he offers fun insight.
Or experience them for the first time with Juliet as she dwells on social issues, history, fashion, and the size of a flashlight.
We're the Time Streams Podcast.
Find us on Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Are you ready to travel through time with us? Then check out Traveling the Vortex, a Doctor Who podcast. For nearly 7 years and more than 500 episodes, we've traveled from one end of the vortex to the other, making different stops with different doctors, reviewing everything from TV stories to audio plays, from books to comics, and more. Sean, Keith, and Glenn take you on a journey through 50-plus years of Doctor Who episodes and spin-off materials. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, so be sure to check us out. And now, we're a proud member of Direction Point, a Doctor Who podcast network. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Up there is the scanner, those are the doors, that is a chair with a panda on it. Sheer poetry, dear boy.
And now it's time for our main story. In November of 2020, I received one of the best gifts I could ever receive. It was a lovely print of the cover of Day of the Daleks from my friend Chris Achilleos. Chris sadly passed away in December of 2021, and we actually had him scheduled on the podcast for February of 2022, which was 1 year ago. Going back in time, Terrence Dicks and Malcolm Hulke may have written the first few Target books, but it was the captivating and amazing artwork that sold them. I bought my first Target book in 1981, and the cover is what drew me to that book. The Doctor Who world lost an icon and a good friend, but today I'm joined by a very, very special guest. Tasha Achilleos is with me. Welcome, Tasha.
Hello, Larry.
It's good to see you. I hope you're well.
I am, yeah. Got a slight bit of a cold season over here, but been all right. All okay. So you can see I've kind of popped a few of the stuff up behind me as well. So I've got some previous collections that my husband had too. So it's quite interesting going through some of the Doctor Who books that he's got. So that's been quite a little bit of a journey for me, really, and learning about the history as to how he got started is quite fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And for me, I started out very early. I've been watching the show for 48 years, and of course, we didn't have Target books in the United States until 1981. So that was the first year they came over. And in 1984, I opened up a store and I sold Target books and hardcover books, and of course, all the books that we could get, and most of the all the early books were drawn by Chris. And he did and his artwork probably is more famous than any artist that came after him in this whole line of work. And I'll go back. This is the very first hardcover book that came out. And of course, that's his drawing, and all his illustrations are inside here as well.
Yeah, that's correct. Because when he first started publishing, he did some of the drawings on the inside. Pulled back from that, so. Found them a bit too time consuming, I think. So I think that was why. I believe.
I can imagine that's a lot of work, and of course, as deadlines came up, I'm sure he even felt the pressure to produce, and that's when you start thinking, okay, this is no longer, the art is fun, but now it's like I've got a deadline and I've got to get this cover done. But what really made it even more special is when they actually reprinted that book in 1981, and Andrew Skilleter did the cover, but they kept all of Chris's illustrations inside the book.
Okay.
So I thought of that as, okay, we've got a really good, we've got two great artists at work here. So of course Andrew's a listener, so he has great respect for Chris's work, I know. So that's one of the great things about it. So let me just ask, tell me about your journey in learning about Chris's work with Doctor Who.
Well, I mean, I was a Tom Baker fan. I was born in 1970, so he was my doctor, and of course he was the one that had the longest history, the longest program. So I got introduced through that to Tom Baker. I was also a Blake Seven fan as well, so I was very much in part of the sci-fi stuff which was coming out in that particular day and age, all kind of British stuff, and that link between Blake Seven and Doctor Who is still there as well. So there's a big link between British sci-fi history. I really got introduced to Chris's artwork because I'm a Tolkien fan, a massive Tolkien fan. And of course I read the books when I was about 9-10 years old, and just wandered into a poster shop one day and came across the Host of Chaos. And that was my that was my introduction to his art. And I didn't even know he was in London. I kind of came up, I left, the Isle of Wight, came up to London to study, do a degree, and then ended up going down this club in London. And that's where I met him. So through friends and mutual friends, I knew him for about 15 years. And then obviously time kind of went by, and I told him about my talking thing probably about 2 years before we actually started to go out with each other.
Yeah.
Then that was the link. So obviously we then kind of clicked a little bit more. I understood that a little bit of his artwork on my wall when I was about 17, 18 years old. So that connection was there. His Doctor Who artwork, I became a lot more fascinated in terms about his Doctor Who artwork through the conventions that we did together.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to meet people. I got to meet the fans. I got to meet the Dwaz community. I got to meet everybody who really was the inspiration behind what he did. So his inspiration, he was very young. Mm-hmm. He worked for Brian Boyle, which is where he got his first artwork through. And he got his job offer through college, really, and just went around and asked to do book covers. And this is how he got introduced to Brian Boyle. And that's where he got the first reprints of the ones which issued in the 1960s. And then they were reprinted again in 1973, I believe. That was
yes.
And then from that, obviously, they did very well. 20,000 copies were sold, and that was his progression with that. But his influences, as we know, were Bellamy. He was doing Radio 2 covers at the time, and he was Hero Spartans, all the centerfolds from that, and he learned to speak English through his work through the Eagle. And this is how he went to England, and this is how he learned our language, is through the little comics. And he wanted to know what was being said in the speech bubbles. And this is how, so he learned through Bellamy. Bellamy was a major influence for him, absolutely huge. And obviously Conan was too, with the clack, as we know, the controversial clack.
Yes, clack. I know I didn't grab that book off my shelf, but that has been my favorite. I actually started that Twitter hashtag a few years ago, hashtag clack, and of course I kept it on my Facebook page for a while, just in honor of Chris, because I think that, and of course I have both of his art books that he did, both in hardcover and paperback. Yeah, that's I'm not sure why I didn't grab those off the shelf, but that's you probably have one right behind you. Yeah.
As we know, I've also got his awards for his outstanding contributions to Doctor Who, which was given to him last year by the Dwaz community.
Yes.
An absolute, honour actually for me to go down and get that. I was invited, and I think it's about 3 months till it's April, about 4 months after he passed away. So it was a big thing for me as well to kind of go down there and interact with all these lovely people that I got to meet through him for the 10 years, which is the Doctor Who community. And so the interpretation of Clack over here was really his kind of
Yes.
his final exclamation mark to his career with Doctor Who. And of course the testimonials when we were doing the conventions. It was so lovely, the stories which I got told. Well, I just listened. I spoke to loads of fans, lovely people, and just kind of hearing the stories between how the childhood and what the book covers meant to them. And I turned around to him when we were doing, I think it was the Capitol, and I turned around to him and I said to him, I think it might be like all these stories I keep hearing about how important your art was to people and how it got them through some difficult points in their life. And I said, I think we need to make that connection. So I came up with the idea of adding the testimonials into the back. Yeah. And then Sean Russell, who's a lovely guy from Candy Jar Publishing, we just spoke about it. Chris then raised it, had a little phone call, and then said, Tasha's come up with this idea about testimonials. That was then taken on board. Sean then took it over and took over all the testimonials, and that was published in the back of Clack. So that was my integration into the world of Doctor Who, was and understanding his role and what he meant to people, because he was so humble.
Yes.
And such a lovely man. I think his influence about what he did with his artwork resonated with him. And I think he was a cultural icon. He's a cultural icon. And he changed art and interpretation of comic book designs for book covers at that time. That was what he did. Mm-hmm. And obviously he took his own interpretation of Kobe this week.
I'm going to see if I can reach this here without extending my headphones here, because I think that is one of the most important covers that what you were saying, the most important cover that he did to influence that, of course, was the invasion of the dinosaur invasion, and where Clack was born. And this is the, and that is one of my favorite covers. I mean, it's and for the fact that the book actually is a better story than what they did on screen.
It's old, yeah. Those wonderful dinosaurs wandering around. And of course, I met Stuart Manning also at the Space Centre.
Yes.
So everybody kind of came together, and they all Doctor Who's, and everybody was wandering around in, Cybermen. It was quite scary, all these, the old version of Cyber, which came across in the Peter Capaldi. I love Peter Capaldi as well. I loved his Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. And of course, when they're all kind of wandering around with all they're all there. It was a bit scary. Mm-hmm. And you meet the Cybermen Legion. There's all these people that, the Daleks, the Sons of Skulls. It's lovely. All these people kind of get together. So that's how I got really introduced to Doctor Who, the artwork of Doctor Who. And then also I met Colin Howard and Alistair Pearson and Andrew Skilleter, who are also really lovely people. And it's just a lovely family. They all kind of bounce off each other very well.
Oh, yeah. I speak with Andrew quite a bit, and he just has nothing but high praise for Chris's work. Of course, he started the whole thing with the early books, and you were talking about Cyberman. This is one of my favorite drawings he did of a Cyberman, which and unfortunately it's only on the first edition of this book.
Okay.
When they reprinted it, they didn't use his artwork again, so it's quite and of course his you were talking Tom Baker. This is one of my favorite Tom Bakers he did for the making of Doctor Who. He did this cover. Beautiful work. Of course, the first book I bought was Day of the Daleks, and that's the I have it right here. This is the print he sent me.
Oh, okay.
And with his he says here, to Larry and the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, your friend Chris, and signed it. And then he also included this wonderful bookmark with his mark on the back. So that was really kind. He was always super nice. But I did want to show you too that not when the book got published in some other countries, they didn't want to pay for the artwork.
Okay.
So I've got a copy of a book here from port from Brazil. You're going to love this. This is somebody attempting to copy the artwork.
I've never seen that before. I wonder if Chris was probably not aware of those things, but then he'll just brush that off as just a bit of a.
Yeah, I always wanted to show this to him, but it never came up. I've only had this book for a few months, and I didn't know that Doctor Who was licensed over there. So they got the license for the book. It's in Portuguese, but and this was from 1975, by the way. So so that basically they did not want to pay for the cover. So they drew their own, and it's terrible. I mean, I'll hold it up so you can see it more detailed, but it's horrible. The Daleks are bad. That's the wrong Doctor, and the Ogron looks terrible. Whereas Chris's detail here, the Daleks are perfect. He draws the best Daleks. And he always drew John Pertwee exactly the way John looked. His doctors were very much on, and the one that John Pertwee liked was this cover.
Oh yeah, it's really good sketch and likeness of John Pertwee.
Because when I was a dealer at TARDIS 22 in Chicago in 1985, and on Saturday morning when the doors opened, John Pertwee came into the room and walked up to our table, and he picked up this book and he said, "This is my favorite."
Oh, lovely. I wonder because Chris, there's a bit of indication around the size of the nose that Chris had to kind of sort out a little bit with the Pertwee family. So he would have been quite, pleased to know that.
Yeah, John, because we had all these books on our table, and John picked up this one and said this was his favorite. He likes the expression on his face. He likes the whole. He was very, very pleased, and that's something you probably don't get to hear much because John is no longer with us as well. Chris's artwork did appear on the German editions of books. This is a German book here.
Ask you some questions around that, yeah, because I've just kind of gone the Dune Dark Van Figures, another one.
Yeah. That's the German Daily Daleks. And of course, and you probably saw, and I know you saw on Instagram, I have a complete copy of the Turkish books as well. And all of his artwork, including his the first one of my also favorites, the Doctor Who and the Daleks cover with a wonderful William Hartnell. And, he all the wonderful copies that he did. One of the things that I thought was really nice is that I don't know if this project never got off the ground, but they were going to reprint the Target books. It was called the Target Book Collection, and they did 7 of these. This is one of 7 copies.
These fine hardcovers.
Yeah. It's got Chris's original artwork with the Target logo on the book, but there's also a reversible dust jacket with somebody else's artwork, which I thought, well, I'd rather have his artwork than somebody else's. But that was how that worked. Also, Chris's artwork got into a lot of other things too. I don't know if you've ever seen this.
No, I haven't.
This is a brochure from the Lionheart Television Company, which was a part of the BBC back in 1980, and their job. This is what they sent to the United States to buy the Doctor Who. It says basically we're offering 172 half hours full or 41 full length movies for your television station to buy Doctor Who. So this is they actually took this cover from the second monster book, which is this one here. So they use the exact artwork from that. I don't know if they got permission to do that. I'm guessing maybe they did, and maybe he signed something and said okay. Who knows? I don't know. Sometimes things happen without that whole because this was the BBC, this was not Target, and basically it has all the descriptions of all the Tom Baker stories that, and of course my television station here in Chicago bought all of them. So we got Doctor Who as a result. I managed to get a hold of and so it has the little Lionheart logo on the back there and some of the pictures they used, and so this was and of course Doctor Who's been in Chicago since 1975. I started when I was really young. We're only a year apart, by the way. So I was born in '69. So so I started watching John Pertwee in 1975, and then they got the Tom Bakers in 1979. But we didn't get the books until 1981.
Yeah.
I met Chris at, I believe it was a Visions convention in the 90s. I know Gene Smith had invited him over, at least for one. I don't know if you were with him at the time. I probably not. I would have remembered. But I remember how kind he was, and how he was always kind to the fans. And not every Doctor Who personality is kind to the fans. I mean, that's really something. I've been lucky with. I had about 2 weeks ago, I had Peter Purvis on the podcast, who played Stephen with the first Doctor, and he was extremely kind and just really, really loved what he did. Recently, I know they reprinted all the Target books, and so they, of course, put Chris's artwork on the reprints. So they went back to the basics, to what I call just the amazing art that he did. Here's the Crusaders. But it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. He also, let's see.
Yes, I think he was quite pleased when they approached him to ask to do 3 other book covers. Yeah, the Doctor Who, the amazing one, Doctor. Yeah, that was all the PG tips, wasn't it? All Typhoon
Tea, right? Yes, and I have the book, the poster, and all the cards. So which you couldn't get in the United States.
Oh, okay. So because you buy quite a few collectible items, don't you?
I've been collecting for 48 years, so that's you can see around me just everything that's here. It's all Doctor Who in the room here. What I wanted to say was I had Sadie Miller on the program, and she's the daughter of Elizabeth Sladen, and this is one of the few times Chris drew Elizabeth Sladen, because most of the time on some of the books you only get to see her from the back. So the one book I was thinking of here, if I can find it here, it's Planet of the Spiders. You only get to see Sarah from the back, but that's another great John Pertwee. This is another Chris drawing. The other one I like, this one I just got, but the Ark in Space.
Yeah.
He did with the Weirin. That's always good. He drew some of and this is actually another good one too. Planet of the Daleks was always a good one of his. Just the detail. It's just the detail is what, and of course nobody drew Davros like Chris did.
I mean, I think that is one of the best book covers in terms of Doctor Who that ever, and his the one that he did for Del Santos, which is the commission.
Yes, yes.
Can I say names on this thing? Can I say
yes.
You can say. Yeah, obviously had the commission, which was the invasion of the Earth, which was the second one. So the other one came from the invasion of, she says, type book cover, and this was the second one, with the Daleks going across Westminster Bridge. I think that's outstanding.
Oh yes, that's this one right here. Dalek invasion of Earth. It's I love the Dalek on fire here, and the detail of the spaceship with Big Ben in the background. Yeah, he did. Yeah, gosh, it's and I'm sure at the time this was a job, and he didn't think that this was going to be anything years later. But of course, I know that people are, at least when I get my social media contacts on there, they're always, oh, here's my Chris Achilleos poster. Here's what I got from this. This is my I've got the original artwork to this book that I got from him, and it's just everybody's so excited about that artwork.
Yeah, because I mean, he did it. He kind of came out and got the 3 reprints done, didn't he, through Brian Bowl, and then they were quite successful. And I think it was Hemsworth or something, who was the director who formed Target Books at the time or something. I can't remember his name.
Yes.
And then obviously inquired about another load of books being done. This is where they approached Frank Bellamy, and he couldn't do it. So then Chris kind of took those on board as well. And then obviously the next load of Target books were released onto the market. He was still really young at the time. He was only 24. And so his interpretation of his own influences from Kirby and which is a comic book, and also the Bellamy connection.
Oh yes, I don't know if you can see over here in this corner here. That is original Frank Bellamy artwork.
Oh my God!
That's from the cover of the 1972 Radio Times.
Wow, that is.
I managed to get a hold of that. I've got the actual Radio Times in my collection too from 1972. It's got the Daleks on the cover and Frank Bellamy. Oh gosh,
Amazing. So that's the direct circular influence that inspired Chris to do the books, and that comedy, that comic snapshot, those little kind of the blazing of colours that he does, and the little. I did the dots with the blazing colours in the background. But it's just quite interesting as you notice his kind of, as he moves through and he learns a little bit more about how to do book covers. And his style changes quite a lot as they kind of go through. It's quite interesting.
They do. They kind of go through. Another cover that I really love is the Doomsday Weapon. Which
right.
And he's got Roger Delgado on there, and just the alien in the background in a different cover, and just making that cover just come alive. And of course, I know this was 1974. Let's see, the other one, the Sea Devils, which his original cover for the Sea Devils, they changed it when they reprinted, but this one with Katie Manning on the front cover and the two Sea Devils. This book became super popular when Legend of the Sea Devils aired on TV. Everybody wanted to get a copy of the original book, so people were asking me, where can I find an original copy of the Sea Devils? I said, well, I own one, but I'm not selling it. It's it's a beautiful copy. But it's simply amazing to see, that some of the new stuff that's happening is getting people interested in what happened. And of course, for me, as a longtime Doctor Who fan, it was just a really big deal that I have some artwork by Chris, and I have things that that mean a lot to me because it's personalized too. It's he and I became Facebook friends a few years ago, and we exchanged some great messages, and we were just wonderful in that. And while I'm there, I also want to thank you for inviting me to his funeral. I was able to watch it live, and I was very moved. And I of course never have seen a Dalek honor guard before.
Oh, that was the sons. Again, can I mention names? So
yes.
Yes, that was Robert Cowley and his wife, and obviously I kind of contacted him because I love Robert Cowley. I meet him and met him at many different shows and talked to his wife many times, and just the Daleks, and they're kind of fascinated with the build of the Daleks and how they're going to get the charity event for getting all the Daleks together at one time. I think that's amazing. But and so of course I contacted him. It's like it was kind of COVID 2021. Everybody was still feeling a little bit anxious about getting together in groups and masses. My first interpretation was to get a whole legion of Daleks.
Now that would have been great.
Marching in front of the hearse. But obviously, I had a little chat to Robert Cowley about it. He was able to bring down 2 Daleks with his wife. So that photograph where the hearse is coming forwards and the 2 Daleks on the side, it meant so much to me having them, and it meant a lot to them being there as well. And when we kind of came through, the Daleks just kind of came through. It meant something. It meant something to me and to the community, and that kind of connection again, which is a connection that we kind of spoke a lot about with Clack, which is the development of Clack. Was this kind of integration of what people who we met through his artwork, that he met and then I met, and I got to know as well. They became friends of mine too. And that connection between the fans and the artwork, because for him it was just a job at the beginning.
Right.
He got married quite young, had 2 daughters, brought them up quite so of course his deadline, he knew what he wanted to do, which is book covers, which is why the storyboard connection of doing all the drawings inside the books got pulled out quite quickly because he didn't want to do that kind of work. So my kind of towards his end, when he was still creating a few paintings, he did 3 more for Clack. And then obviously the 3 more when they approached him to do the extra book covers for the Battlefield. And and the ones with the controversial noose around their ears is taken off. I think he was very pleased to still be embedded as part of the Doctor Who community. I think he was pleased to be asked, and he enjoyed doing it, and he very much enjoyed doing Clack.
Yes.
Russell is a wonderful publisher, and he was able to get the best out of Chris. And Chris is obviously knew his art extraordinarily well. He knew what it was about. He knew what his message was about, and Sean did too, because Sean's a major fan of Doctor Who. We kind of met at one of the Cardiff cons. It was just a little tiny convention that he got invited to, and there was Sean Russell stood on the left-hand side. And we just kind of approached him, connected. He connected, found out he was a publisher, and that's how Clack kind of started off. Oh. And that for him to have all his Doctor Who stuff in one place was just he drew everything by hand. I've got to be saying, okay.
Yes.
Every little sketch, even the books. If you had to design something, they were tiny sketches of the bigger paintings. So there was a bigger painting, and then a tiny one that he was going to embed in the book. He did everything by hand. He was just, he never did anything on computer. He was just really quite a pure artist, I think, because largely couldn't get his head around the technology, and he just didn't feel as though he had the time. He wanted to stay as purist as he could. He was very good at it. So that connection with him being able to draw things out, and he was very good at publishing books too. Sirens was almost self-published, obviously published through something else, but he created it himself. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole design with all these little pencil sketches in his kind of phototype for Sirens, where he's literally drawn the whole book out. Amazing. I mean, how incredible is that?
That's amazing.
He did the same with Clack. So these kind of little kind of sketches in there, and these little kind of drawings that he always put into there. So I was going to say very quickly as well, because obviously this is going to be reprinted. Both myself and Esther and Anna, his two daughters, are working with Sean Russell to get this reprinted. It's going to come out again in April. And there's going to be a slight bit of changes in the back. There's going to be some testimonials from his family, and also from myself just to kind of provide an exclamation mark towards his career. So, and what I kind of realised about the people that I met and how important his art was to them. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be republished in April, just as a retail, just as a paperback, and then get it out again. So it'll be done again. There'll be a few slight changes in there. So I hope people like the reprint, and hopefully we'll get it out and advertise it and get some links out there. And that's coming through Sean Russell again as well in Clack, so it's coming out. So. And of course, doing Clack got him behind the drawing board again. So I saw him draw during my marriage and during my life with him. I saw him draw 6 Doctor Who black paintings, all from scratch right up until the end of fruition. And it was an incredible process to see him do it. And so it was just a sketch, and then obviously reference sketches, and then 2 days later it didn't look like much, and then 2 days later you walked in, it was just like, how did you do that? It was actually this kind of, process of watching him create and bring things together. He was really good at concepts and conceptual design. He knew how to make something pop on a page, and that was his skill level. And it was such a skill level. He understood the market so well. He understood himself, what inspired him, and made him turn to sketching. He came from Cyprus. He didn't draw in Cyprus, and he started when he came here. And obviously showed an extraordinary flair for eye-to-hand coordination, and all the mythology and history fascinated him. So he kind of arrived in the country around about the time that all the sci-fi stuff was kind of taking off, and the comic books. And this is where he got introduced to comics, and that inspired his love of Kirby, which he met him. And Kirby actually walked up to him in a convention and said, "Hello, you're Chris. I really like your work." And for Chris to kind of like, "Oh my God, Jack Kirby, you're one of my idols." So I love how our artwork circulates around, and the influences of his influences, and that kind of connection. And I love the fans. The fans are actually the most important part, because they keep it alive. They're the ones who keep it alive. And they're the ones who put extraordinarily well to Doctor Who. I didn't realise how precious it was. And I didn't realise how important it was until I started talking to people. And I'm very pleased to be considered as a part of that family of Doctor Who. It means so much to me, because through him being an artist, understanding him as an artist, he was a commercial artist. He just, but that emotional connection between what his art meant to fans out there and what he did really meant a lot to him, and the Doctor Who world meant quite a lot to him. He enjoyed the connection. He enjoyed the artists. He enjoyed talking to other artists. He enjoyed being inspired by other artists, and he worked hard, and he deserved all the accolades that he got, and he will still get, because he was extraordinarily good artist. He was very humble as a person that you know, as an artist and person you live with. It never went to his head. He was just a man who enjoyed going out with his friends, his family, and really just kind of like took the best out of life that he could, and had this amazing this kind of amazing way of living and looking at life. So he was very calm in his approach. I think he learnt that because he was an artist. This thing of actually bringing down small bits of information and making something big, locked in a room by yourself, just listening to a radio, it made him quite a patient man, I think. And this is how his interpretation of the world and everything that he had around it. He was a very patient man, very humble.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so my big question, or the big question that is on everybody's minds here, will Chris's art be available again? Will the shop reopen?
Yeah, so it's going to change because obviously Esther and Anna are taking some of the imagery at the moment. They are currently building a website with a new shop that will take quite some time to come out.
Sure,
obviously, but they are selling some of the imagery through a platform right now. So they're trying to get as much of his artwork out as they can. Right now, obviously, kind of restarting a business, understanding what the artwork is part of their journey as well, to kind of get his artwork out too. So, but yes,
good.
It will, and it's going to come through his daughters. So, yes, they're starting to get some of the platforms out there. That they haven't got the Doctor Who stuff yet, but they've got all this, they've got all the backgrounds and the information, and Bill Russell's still around to help me out as well. Anything like that, and this lovely world of Doctor Who that just kind of comes and supports each other. So yes, they're going to get all the Target stuff back out there again, and they're going to start working with some of the merchandising out there again. It may take a little bit of time, but it will get out there. Yes, definitely.
Wonderful.
So, stuff will be available through his daughters. So I think they're just kind of just trying to get their heads around he's actually done, and just kind of working out how the best way to kind of get it out there and stuff like that. But it's actually out there now. But I think the Doctor Who stuff isn't quite there yet. But it will be. It's going to be there.
That's great, because I know that once they get that going, it will sell probably even more than it did before.
Because, I think so.
And that'll be wonderful, because getting his art, his artwork is going to be out there whether it's sold or not, because it's still being displayed. I'll when I do my daily troll through social media, there's at least 5 Chris Achilleos pictures that come up, either through somebody putting a Target book up there, or putting a print up there, or something else that he did, and part of that world. And it's one of the most important. I consider him to be one of the most important artists in the series, because if it hadn't been for his artwork, they wouldn't have sold a Target book.
No, the 20,000 copies that flew off the shelves with the reprints really indicated a lot about the cover art. Yes. Kind of motivated from the 1960s, and just kind of gave it a pop in the 1970s that everybody was. I think the 1970s, 1973. I don't know. I was only 3 years old, but I think it wasn't particularly a good, positive decade. It was a bit of a hard go through. So those lovely things. There you go.
Yeah, this was a Doctor Who magazine that came out a few not long ago. Special on Target Books featuring Chris's art on the cover and a lot of his art in the magazine. So this was let's see, I can't see the date on this, but it's okay. But it came out not long ago, and so it's still relevant. And of course, my good friend David J. Howe, of course, used Chris's artwork on the front cover of the Target book.
I got a couple of Howell's books. Yeah.
So of course, and I know David and I talk quite a bit. So he's just the one of the places where you could just open the book and see all of Chris's covers in full color. And there's even they've got a little story about him in here and all the wonderful things that here it is right here, the Chris Achilleos page here where he gets a big mention of what he did. And it's so nice that history keeps going, and that you're now part of that history.
I am part of that history, and I'm doing the conventions with him was lovely, and the people, it was just lovely. The people that we met were just fantastic, and the Doctor Who ones really shone. I mean, Hal as well kind of helped him with his calendar, so that circulation of the inspiration when he was saying that, how do I set up the concept of the front page of my calendar, the Doctor Who calendar? And he phoned David Howe and had a chat, and so his influence was part of the calendar as well. So this lovely amalgamation of inspiration and influence, and how we all fans that became collectors, and then audio voices and verbal representations of the worlds that we know, and it's lovely. It's very open-hearted, and everybody talks about it with massive amount of respect. And I think he was I don't think understood when he first did the book covers just how big it would be, and just how heartfelt it all is, and how important it was to some of the kids back there. And now, of course, they're out, and they're still walking around. Still very, the Doctor Who fans, people that I know, if I look at their Facebook feed, they're watching reruns of the same Doctor Who programme 150 times over, and it doesn't really matter how many times they watch it. And I'm just like, that's massive. It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, I noticed when I talk to other actors who come to Doctor Who after doing other shows, and I said, so how many conventions did you do for that other show? None. Tosin Cole, who I've talked to at a convention, he goes, I was not prepared for Doctor Who. In fact, when I got the part, other actors called me and said, here, let me prepare you, because this is a different world. And it's just, it's something that, I mean, this is, and right now I've been asked to be part of a documentary that they're doing for the 60th anniversary for fans. And it's almost more than what the Star Trek fans were going through back in the early 70s, late 80s, when, that was their world. That's a little bit lesser, but now the Doctor Who world, where people spend months recreating the costumes, or recreating a piece of art or a prop, or coming up with I just spoke to Tim Traylor, who now voices John Pertwee for Big Finish, and he's never met John Pertwee, but he studied him, in film, and said, I came up with this voice doing something for something else, and Tom Baker stopped him and said, you sound just like John. And that's how he got the part. Was Tom Baker was like, because Tom and John were very good friends, and he says, I've always heard, you sound just like John Pertwee. So and of course, now we've got the children of Doctor Who stars like Daisy Ashford and Sadie Miller playing their moms. Yeah. Carolyn John and Liz Sladen on Big Finish. So it's becoming a multi-generational, even like Peter Purvis, who told me that he's got more work now as a Doctor Who actor, and he was only on the show for 46 episodes. in the 60s. And when he got fired, he forgot about Doctor Who and went on to do something else. And now it's paying for his retirement. Or William Russell, who's 98 years old and still flying to California every year to be at Gallifrey One.
Yeah.
You know that. And I know you've been to LA a few times.
Yeah. We did Gallifrey beginning of 2018. And yeah, so I think it was about February 2018 we did that. Yeah, and obviously I think David Howe was there at the time. Other people, Keith Barnfather, who does all the
Keith,
videos. That really, unfortunately, we were talking to him down at the Capitol, and he was going to do Chris, and unfortunately never got around to I don't know why it really happened. No, something didn't make it into something that never happened, which was, you know, a bit of a shame at the end of it. Didn't get Chris on the Mythmakers back, you know. So all these you meet the same faces again, and you meet the same people, and it's a family. It's a community. And this outpouring of you kind of talk to these lovely, exuberant young people who used to come to the stall when he was selling, and of course I ended up going. And you know, this understanding of the passion, the detail that they know about every episode, and after they're going, I'm learning from you.
Yes.
I'm history from you on board, and taking some of these, taking how you feel about the show, and now I'm sitting here learning about the show from you. You know, so yeah, it's this big pot of lovely information, and just.
You've probably never seen this either, but this is a program from the very first American Doctor Who convention in 1979, and this is all of Chris's artwork.
Wow.
And this is from Los Angeles, Corona, Los Angeles, presented by TV 52, and of course getting together to sell Doctor Who episodes to the rest of the country. So it's something, how, you know, and things like this. I doubt Chris has ever seen this document. So it would never have any reason to go back to England. So it was one of those things. But his reach was far. He was far reaching, and when he put pen to paper, you know, he probably at the time no idea that the magic this was going to create decades later. And now we're in the 60th anniversary year of the program, and everybody is, you know, this is a big year for Doctor Who. And we've got, you know, we got a new story airing with David Tennant as the Doctor. We've got Neil Patrick Harris, of course, from America, so we've got him in there. We've got every convention that's happening this year has got more stars than anybody else. And I guess the exhibition is going to reopen this year. In England, they're going to reopen the Doctor Who exhibition for the anniversary.
Okay.
And that's something that is going on. And of course, Doctor Who items are selling at a premium right now. It's
Yeah.
It's I mean, I showed you a copy of Planet of the Daleks. A copy of this book on eBay about 6 months ago sold for $2,600. $2,600. I know, and because it was a first printing, it was in new condition, and I mean the book retailed at like £3.20 back in '75. You know, but it's collectors are really looking for these early items, and I think the oldest thing I have is I've got some things from 1964 in here, but I've been doing this a long time, so I don't go crazy, but but it's fun to get like I said, this book collection I got. It was all shrink wrapped together. These are all Target books that came out recently, and no one could tell me that it looks like some bookstore did this. It wasn't an official release, so that was something different. And of course the Brazilian Brazilian book that had the fake artwork on it, and that's, I'll put that up again just so listeners can see, the viewers can see that one. This is somebody trying to copy Chris Achilleos and not being very successful. Yeah. and this is the only, and so some of the covers were, I'm like, why didn't they just use the original cover? And the covers are so iconic and so wonderful. And I'm trying to think, the original monster book is still one of my favorites that he did.
Yeah. So Chris has got 2 copies of the second monster book that I kind of pulled off.
I never understood why the second monster book was so tiny.
It's tiny. It's too tiny.
Yeah, this is the first one, and then the second one was kind of small. So I know that these are targets, but this was and I did an episode on these a while back where these are just the filler books. The marketing was going so well that we just needed to put out more Doctor Who, and especially in the after when they did the 3 Doctors in 1973, they actually thought that was going to be the last season of Doctor Who. They were going to cancel the show, but then everything started to pick up in that 10th year. And they said, because most shows don't last 10 years. That was the rule. BBC said 10 years, we're good. So to have a show last 60 years, even though it went off the air for a little while, it never stopped. When I remember in 96, when we got the Doctor Who movie with Paul McGann, we were just, let's it wasn't very good, but it was still Doctor Who. And then that moment when the Radio Times came out in 2005 with the TARDIS on the cover, and you had to unfold it to see Christopher Eccleston and completely rebooting the series again. And of course, since then, it's been, since 2005, we've had a season every year since then.
Yeah. So it's been back on, and obviously Steve Moffat, Gary Russell, who I've met a few times, who's lovely. So they're all integrated and all fans too. So I think Gary's a fan. So as well, that child experiences. It was part. Of course, he was Dick in the Famous Five too, wasn't he? So there you go. And as you know, that kind of childhood experiences and coming into adults and writing and the creativity of getting all that stuff on the page. And Chris was part of the visual, and Gary Russell was part of the visual, and they all started as kids, kind of either working in childhood imagination or BBC or production or direction. So I got an introduction into that side of the world, and then obviously that became part of their career. So yeah, you can see it's fascinating. It is fascinating how little pieces kind of come together. Everybody's got this role to play and keeps it ongoing, and this myth that it's become.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's just the best part about the legacy of Chris Achilleos will last forever. And that's I think for many people that is something you don't think about when you're alive. And when all the people, you really know who your friends and admirers are after you're gone, and know that it's not about, that we're still talking about him. I still think of the memories I had of meeting him and talking with him, and I have his he is around me all the time. This is all around me here. And I thought, what a wonderful opportunity. And I'm glad you and I became good friends as well. That was a bonus for me, because I really love I do love talking about it. This is what I do. I started this podcast 5 years ago to help collectors and educate people and do more with that. And of course, bringing people on like yourself I will believe a lot of people will be listening to this conversation very carefully, because they are very big fans of Chris Achilleos. And that's and of course, just to let my listeners know, what you don't know behind the scenes here is we spent an hour troubleshooting our Zoom call. So we've been on this for a couple hours now. But I really want to, first of all, I want to thank you, Tasha, for being on the podcast today. You've enlightened me with so many things, and of course, I think I've enlightened you with a few things as well.
Always.
And so my guest is Tasha Achilleos. Listeners, I'm going to, to my listeners here, stay tuned for the most outrageous offer. We'll be right back.
The vervoids are probably the best dirty joke in Doctor Who.
They're hermaphroditic plants.
A lot of plants are.
So there you go. That's it's based on science.
No, they'll ship anything.
There are probably 11 and handle shippers out there. You just have to drill a hole where his mouth is, and you're all set.
You know he needs the room. I've seen it in pictures.
I'm not saying you're not a fan. I'm saying you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Doctor Who gives a drunken Doctor Who podcast for the end times.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors podcast. Keep collecting.
Hi, I'm Rupert Booth.
I am known as Paul Ferry.
And my name is Barry Williams.
Together, we host Time Ram.
Time Ram's a cruel mistress.
It's a random number generator.
That also.
We roll a number from 1 to 13, and that's our Doctor. Then 1 to 300 for the story, and then we ram them together.
Even if it doesn't make sense.
Cruel, I tell you.
Time Ram, putting the wrong Doctors in the wrong stories, so you don't have to.
You're listening to
the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast on the Direction Point Podcast Network. Keep collecting.
All my travellings throughout the universe, I have battled against evil, against power-mad conspirators. I should have stayed here. The oldest civilization. Decadent, degenerate, and rotten to the core. Power-mad conspirators, Daleks, Sontarans, Cybermen. They're still in the nursery compared to us. 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really corrupt.
And now it's time for the most outrageous offer. The most outrageous offer is a Doctor Who item or Doctor Who related item that is priced by a seller to be a little ridiculous or crazy or way above what it should be, or 10 times what it's selling for. And there's no good reason for that. So today we have a book. The book is called The Scientific Secrets of Doctor Who. It is a book by, let's see here, by Simon Guerrier and Dr. Marek Kukala. And this is a BBC book. And it looks like it was published, let's see, when was it published? Doesn't say. 2015, it looks like, 2015. So there we go. This book is available in hardcover or paperback, and this happens to be the paperback version of this book. And it is a seller from Austin, Texas, called Campbell Bookstores. I have not been able to verify whether that's a real store or an online store, but they've been on this is from Abe Books, and so they've been on Abe Books since November 1st of 2021, so not very long. They do have a solid seller rating. And it looks like, let's see, it says mind-bending blend of story and science that will help you see Doctor Who in a new light. That's from the back. Says brand new copy, paperback edition. Okay, new. He has, by the way, shipping within the United States is $3. He is asking $1,128.68. Alarm bells should be going off because it's not these uneven amounts usually bother me, but that book certainly does not go for that price. We looked around, and for one thing, we found it on Amazon.com. You can get the paperback book for $10.36 or used from $6.38. I also found it on eBay, buying it used for $10.36. You can also find it on A-Books for $10.36. So that seems to be the going rate for this book. Incidentally, you can find the hardcover edition for $9.38, so a little bit cheaper on the hardcover. That just seems crazy. Why would you spend $1,100? We, of course, reached out to the seller and received no reply. So, and of course, we have the link up on our website for this. Sometimes the links disappear, especially after I write to them and say, hey, is this the right price? Or was it supposed to be $11.28 and you just got crazy with the decimal point? That makes more sense. But we see these all the time. I get emails, I get messages, I get all kinds of stuff from people saying, hey, this is crazy. Absolutely. Some of them are crazy. Some of them not so crazy. When you see a book out there that's being sold for $1,100, let's find out why. Not too many of them are out there, or it's the only one out there. Of course, when a second one pops up, that usually prompts the first seller to go, I'm not going to get that, so I'm going to have to bring it down. But they're hoping it sells before a second one comes out. In many cases, these bookstores that have these ridiculous prices, and we did this, by the way, if you want to dial back to the previous episode, look for the episode where I interviewed David J. Howe for the New Who Adventures. He has a theory that some of these stores are online only, and they're robots. They're not even real stores. So there's a guy here who's offering this book for this price. He doesn't have the book in stock. He's going to buy it from seller B, who may also not have that book in stock. So they buy it from seller C, who is going to direct ship it to seller A, who's then going to ship it to you, which means how long is it going to take for you to get this book? Well, that's one thing. And of course, I haven't been able to verify with this seller whether or not it's in stock, whether they're a real store. I don't know. If you happen to know the Campbell Bookstore in Austin, Texas, if it's a real place, let me know. I'd like to be correct about this. I want to make sure I can get a link and get all that stuff. I try to have everything as factual as I possibly can. Of course, if the link disappears, I do have a copy of the printout, which I will put up on the website as well, so you can see that it actually existed. So there you go. That is the most outrageous offer. And that wraps up the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast for the 64th episode. I want to thank my wonderful guest, Ms. Tasha Achilleos, who gave me a great interview, and we're excited to know that Chris Achilleos' print shop will be set up again. His children are working on that, and as soon as that's ready to go, we will be the first to let you know. It's just amazing how involved in Doctor Who Tasha was, and how amazing she was with all of the people that came to her side when Chris passed away. I was fortunate enough to even be invited to his funeral virtually, and I was honored to be there. It was a great honor for my dear friend Chris, who was lost too soon. So anyway, that's a wonderful thing. What's going on next episode? Episode 65 is tentative, but I think we're going to do it. We're going to do classic hardcovers 1982 with my returning guest, Professor Tony Witt, who gives me the insight to the story, and I'll tell you about that very short year of only 9 hardcovers in that particular year. So there you go. We thank you for listening. We are a Direction Point Network podcast. Be sure to check us out at DoctorWhoCollectors.com. Keep collecting.
Direction Point! Direction Point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.